stepping inside the principal's office, building community with the right synergy. Stepping.
A lot of times this topic comes up with leaders. It's either met with
it's a safe place to be, where leaders can be free. Ooh, come learn new lessons.
Gap is closing.
Feel free to ask a question. Inside the principal's office.
I mean, are you guys principals or middle school students?
Inside the principal's office.
Good morning. Charles is over there jamming on the one. Welcome to Inside the Principal's Office. Thank you for stepping inside the principal's office with us this morning. My name is Michael McWilliams. I am one half of this amazing team. Yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. We're pretty amazing. This community that we are attempting to build, it is amazing. Because Inside the Principal's Office is about more than Mac and Charles. It is about building a community of leaders and creating a safe space for us to get together and having amazing conversations like the one that we're going to have this morning. I am Mac. I am one half of the Inside the Principal's Office team. I am a career principal, completing my 20th year as an elementary school principal in the state of Texas. Our campus that we lead and we have the privilege to lead is a PLC model school, one of 26 elementary model schools in the state of Texas, one of 183 elementary schools in the United States. So we're very, very proud of what we've been able to produce. And I'm very, very proud of this community of leaders that we are building here. And I get to do it every week with this guy, Charles Williams, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. How's it going, Guy?
Good morning, Matt. Good morning. Thank you. How are you, sir? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm at a little disadvantage. I'll just be transparent. I'm kind of not necessarily in my rhythm and groove yet because something's wrong with my laptop and I can't access StreamYard via my laptop. I'm on my phone. I don't know where to look. I can't find the camera. I'm trying to get it together this morning because we're talking about something so very important.
That's
but
true.
Yeah, that for the long, you said, how am I doing? And I think that was the long way of saying pretty good.
Pretty good. Well, you know what, before I jump in, because I told Laura the other day, I said, look, I got to make sure I say this. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your daughter's birthday is tomorrow, is it not?
Look at you knowing important dates. We are family. Yeah, tomorrow she will be 22 years old. Yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
I earned every gray hair. And if she's watching, which she probably is, because she's a sharer of Inside the Principal's Office, a fan of her dad, but also you. She follows you on Twitter. I will let her know that you remember.
Or yes, please tell her I said happy birthday. And if you're watching, a very, very happy birthday to you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Charles Williams. I am a principal in Chicago. And so I just want to do a quick shout out to my school. So we had some amazing things happen. We just won our 5th and 6th grade championship and our 7th and 8th grade basketball championship.
Look at
and
you.
So yeah, so it's like we are champions on the court, but one of my 7th graders also won the West Side Black History Month essay competition. So we are champions on and off the court. So big shout out to our tiny little school on the far west side of Chicago. Good doing deal. Some big things. So in addition to that, I also host the Counter Narrative podcast. I'm here. We are authors. We are authors. And we, it's just a slew of things, but this is not about us. So first of all, we're talking about a great topic this morning, and it really pertains to many of you watching. So we want to make sure that you jump in, that you talk to us. We want to know you're here. So let us know, say good morning. But we also want to hear your comments, your questions as we move. I see Renisha pop in. She was with us last week. Thank you for rejoining us. And John, as always. Now, I also want to say good morning to our two guests, Liz and Rachelle. I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about you and how you're doing this morning. So Liz, I'm going to kick it over to you first.
Okay, well, good afternoon. I'm calling in from Switzerland. So it is the late afternoon here in Switzerland. I live right on the border with Austria and Liechtenstein and Germany, so right in the heart of Europe.
Nice.
So good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to everyone in the States. So who am I? So I am the CEO and director of an international school here in Switzerland. I have a school that's age 3 to 18. So we have the full continuum. We're an international baccalaureate school, and our students come from all around the world as well as local students. And we were just discussing before we started, for us, the very current situation we're facing with Ukraine at the moment. So we're starting to see some students coming in, but maybe we'll talk some more about that later. My background, I'm a primary teacher from background, and I've lived around the world. I used to be the head at the British School in Boston at one point in Massachusetts. So I did a stint in the States, and I've been all over the world. So I'm really pleased to join you, and I'm looking forward to sharing some practice. Over to you, Rachelle.
Well, hey, you did. I usually do that wrong. Thank you, Liz. So my name is Rachelle Dene Poth, and I am a Spanish and STEAM educator from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, longtime educator. I'm also a full-time consultant and an attorney and an author. So love learning, love all things education, and things that I like to learn about is pretty much anything. Teaching Spanish is great, but I also have an 8th grade STEAM course on emerging technology. And so I get to talk about artificial intelligence and augmented virtual reality, and lately NFTs and blockchain, and a lot of really interesting topics. But I'm just excited to be here to be part of the conversation, and fingers crossed the technology holds up, because you never know, but we'll see. We'll see. But thank you for having me on with you all this morning, or this afternoon, because for Liz, it's this afternoon.
Thank you for being here. At some point, I want to ask you then about Boston Dynamics, because they creep me out. Oh, I think she froze. But all right, Mac, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I think that this is the power, and even in introductions, I think that this is the power. We've demonstrated the power of this platform and this community of leaders that we're learning. We have Texas and Illinois, and we said Pennsylvania and Switzerland leadership all in the same area in space, with all of those that have logged in today. And again, we want to have a dialogue. The four of us, we are on screen, but there are those that are chiming in and that are here on social media, and we're going to talk about a great topic this morning. Our format of the show is there are 2 questions that we're going to address today, centered around the Great Resignation. We're going to discuss that. And then there's a section of our show where we have ideas that stick. We want to make sure that everything that we talk about today, that it informs our practice, and that as a result of our time spent together in this space today, we lead differently Monday. We're going to have a great Saturday morning together, and we want us to be reflective practitioners, and we want to implement something and try something new and different as a result of our time together. So we're going to jump right in today. We don't want to, take up your entire Saturday morning, but we're going to go ahead and start with our discussion question 1. And after we hear discussion question 1, Rachelle, we want you to jump right in, and we want you to give your thoughts, and then we will want Liz to chime in, and then the both of us will chime in as well, and we'll pull in some of the comments that we see on social media. So let's roll the tape. Question number 1.
Inside the Principal's Office Discussion Question 1. In December 2021, 143,000 workers in the U.S. education sector quit their jobs, and 55% of teachers say they're considering leaving their jobs sooner than they'd planned because of the pandemic, an increase from 37% approximately 1 year ago. Does this match the reality you have seen in your schools, and what can we do as leaders to encourage more teachers to stay in the profession?
That's a big question.
Mhm.
And I'm up first. Yeah. So, I teach in a smaller school district in Pittsburgh, and I have a lot of friends, like we all do, that teach in different places all throughout the country, throughout the world for that matter. And I do know, and I've seen on social media, I'm sure we've all seen people say, like, I quit my job today. Today's my last day. I'm leaving. I'm done. Or this is, I'm and it seemed to be so shocking the first times that some of that was being posted. I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine just all of a sudden just like quitting like that. But with all things considered, all the stress and challenges of the last couple of years, I mean, it's not just specific to education. The number of
Right.
people in all areas of work, I mean, there's tremendous shortages that are out there. And it's, I mean, with anything, like, how do you encourage anybody to stay in the profession at this point, especially with everything that's going on? But specific to teachers, I think a lot of the time, and this is, and I actually posted a question on Twitter last night because I like to get that crowdsource information too, just for some other ideas, because we're better when we're working and collaborating together. But
Right.
things that I think tend to work more is, I mean, having that support. And that is not something that when I first started teaching a while ago, I kept to myself a lot. And I've written about this a lot too. I've become very transparent and vulnerable in what I've shared. I wasn't like that for years. But, if you're having these challenges and you're struggling and you don't necessarily know where to go, and it's hard with so much going on right now to find that time in the day where you can go and sit and talk with somebody. And so I think providing a space where we have faculty meetings, there's different department meetings that come up, but sometimes they're focused on, and they need to be focused on, like, there's a test coming up or there's these mandates that we have to go through. And so those obviously have to be at the forefront of that. But I think providing different spaces and opportunities and ways for educators that are in our schools to connect and to have time to do something that's not just focused on, like, all of these tasks, to focus on things that
Right.
need to have more awareness. Like, mental health is something that has not been widely spoken about for a long time, because it was kind of I don't know how to classify it, but I mean, people were embarrassed maybe to talk about it or didn't know
Mhm.
the right way to talk about it. But it has fortunately come to the forefront, just like social emotional learning. And I think when we bring in, and this is kind of a long answer, so I'll try to wrap it up. But I think that when we reach out, one, it's, providing space where teachers can just have time together and carving that out somewhere. And it's something fun, something relaxing, something that's needed, and involving them in those decisions. Like, what is something that will help you? I've heard some friends say that, in their schools, administrators are offering to go and just cover the class for 10 minutes just to give the teachers a chance to go take a walk outside for 10 minutes, or, go grab a cup of coffee just to take a break, or something small like that. Providing opportunities for, those connections, for mentoring, for support, but just being involved in part of the conversation, asking, like, what do you need? And having everybody kind of together to share. I think that's what's the most important to do that can help. And then also talking about the benefits, I mean, tremendous benefits of teaching, and the realization that, like, everybody's going through some struggles right now too. So I don't know, just my initial thoughts off the top of my head, since I went first.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Very good. Liz, what are your thoughts?
Well, I find this really challenging because when you ask any teacher, why did you become a teacher? They almost always say the same thing, is that they
Mhm.
wanted to make a difference to the communities that they serve. So when we think about the teachers, the attrition in the profession, have they changed somehow? Has their moral purpose, has their why changed? And invariably, the answer is no, it hasn't changed
Mhm.
at all. So there is something about the way that our profession is operating and how our schools are operating and our systems are operating, which means that it's getting in the way of people being able to achieve their core purpose.
Mhm.
So that, I think, is the question, is what's getting in the way? And when we look at all the data around attrition right across the world, it's not exclusive to the States or the UK or the international sector, is what we start to see is the same things keep coming up. So teacher agency, lack of teacher agency is a major issue. Inflexibility in contracts and working. And we see, what workers are now looking for in this age. We look at flexible working as well. Let's not forget the profession, 78% female, is a feminized profession. And so if we're seeing massive attrition in those first 5 years of teaching, and also in that age bracket from 30 to 45, what is it that's getting in the way? And so I think that's the question that as school leaders, we've got to really start to unpick. And the things like, meetings, it's just really nitty gritty stuff. If it's not purposeful and relating to the teaching and learning that's happening in your classroom, why are we doing it? Get rid of it. And I think to be bold as leaders and to be really clear about what is important and what isn't, and actually to take a stance on the things that aren't important and get rid of them. That's it.
Good. I think that y'all both hit on things that I think that's at the core of it. And Rachelle, a culture of collaboration is so very important, that this job has always been difficult. Well, not necessarily difficult. I'll say that the work is very complex. It is, a lot of people will look at education and, you get a book, you get the teacher edition, it looks like, a great teacher makes it look very simplistic, but it is very complex. And I think that the more we can allow teachers to truly collaborate and feel the support of their colleagues, so they're not working in isolation, I think that that is going to help the great resignation, people just waking up and saying that, although I still want to make a difference, it's just become so overwhelming that I don't feel that I can do it anymore. So I think as leaders, one of the biggest things that we can do is in your building, start a dialogue with teachers. And ask these questions. And these are questions that I ask that I pull from the Gallup Q12. If anybody is familiar with the Gallup Q12, it's questions that gauges the level of engagement on your campus. But just start with those very simple. Do you know what is expected of you at work? And I believe that a lot of times teachers are overwhelmed because there's so many things expected of them at work. And so as leaders, what we can do is we can begin to look at our core mission of educating kids, and then look at all of the things that are expected and help teachers create a prioritized list. What are the things that are closely aligned to our core mission of educating kids and making sure that every kid every day gets what they need to be successful? Clarify that for them. Yeah, while all these things, we're expecting all these things, these are the 10 things that are most closely aligned to our mission. And these are the things that we're going to focus on every single day, because it really begins to be overwhelming if teachers think that they have to do everything every day to excellence that is expected of them. So start there with, do you know what's expected of you? This is what I expect of you. And then ask those follow-up questions. Do you have what you need to get that done? And am I giving you adequate feedback? Charles, what do you think?
So, Mac, no, I was trying not to hop in because I absolutely agree with you, and so trying to, you have your list of things to say and you're like, well, Rachelle said that, well, Liz said that. So I have one last thing that I'm going to add to this portion before we move on. But I think one of the things, and you're absolutely right, is that teachers are feeling burnt out. And I don't know about you all, but in our profession, or in my building at least, I always talk about how there's a delayed gratitude, right? That we don't see the fruits of our labors until years later, right? Our kids come back to visit us and they say, thank you. And that's great, right? That's great to know. But when you're in a position like this, when you're in a situation like this, I can't wait 3, 4, 5 years to understand that I made an impact on a child's life. Right. I don't have that time. We as leaders don't have that time to tell the teacher, just wait, you'll see, right? So the other day, as we were sitting down and having conversation around data, as we were watching movement, some of my teachers were frustrated. We were looking at NWEA data, and I had a teacher who was like, I'm frustrated. This child's only at the 20th percentile. They're far from grade level. They're far from, and I said, no, you're absolutely right. If we were looking at that 20th percentile in isolation, we would have a lot of questions, but let's consider the fact that that child at the beginning of the year was at the 1st percentile. There's a huge gains. So let's celebrate those gains. Let's recognize immediately, and we talk about that in our book, The Celebrations, right? We have to focus on those celebrations. And I think that's one of the things that we as leaders, because as we're trudging through, and as Liz referenced earlier, there's so many things happening around us. And you know, we're here in the States, but the things that are happening across the world, in Ukraine and things like that, it's happening in the background, but it's there. And we're not thinking about it. It's impacting us. We're kind of trudging through. And if we don't know that we're making an impact, if we don't know that we're making progress, that's when that question, at least in my opinion, that's when that question starts to come in. Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of doing this? And so I've tried to tell my teachers, let's focus on that. Let's celebrate these small wins, right? And we don't call them small wins because they're victories that lead up to. And so we celebrate those things. And I think when teachers realize that, yeah, it may not look great right now, but in the larger picture, I'm making that progress. It helps to give me what I need to continue moving forward. And so, I don't know. There was two things. So that was one, celebration. But I also just want to caution, because I'm trying to talk to both teachers and leaders. I'm that leader that says that I'm trying to be everything to everyone. And John Maxwell just yelled at me, not personally, but through his podcast. He was like, you can't be everything to everyone. But you know, we're trying. So just leaders, be cognizant of that. If you are like me, if you're like many of the leaders that have come into this space, you love your people and you want to take care of your people, but don't burn yourself out trying to be everything to everyone and trying to make sure that I'm going to do everything I can to keep them in by yourself. Rely on that team. But those are my two. You know, celebrate those victories, but also rely on the vast array of resources that you have, your team, to make sure that people are getting what they need. And I'll share a little more in the next response about some ways to do that. But those are just some of my immediate thoughts. So, you know, I'm curious, and I know that I was actually going to try to slide this in between. Liz, if you don't mind, I don't want to ignore this. I think that we're sitting here, we talk about a global network, right? We want to bring educators in, and there's something happening. Like, for us, I think it would be, you know, ludicrous of us, ignorant of us, to sit here and just pretend like it's just, the Great Resignation, when this global crisis is happening. You know, for some of us around the world, for Liz, right outside your door, well, almost, maybe down the block. But so I'm curious if you wouldn't mind just sharing with us, you know, kind of how this is impacting, you know, the world of education. I know earlier you talked a little bit about that, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary time, and I said before we started that I'm actually waiting for a call right now, because I've got actually a message that's just come into me. I've got a family that's just got out of Ukraine, and they're coming across Europe right now, and they're moving in with us. It's a multi-generational family that we're taking in. Goodness knows for how long for. One of them is a teacher, but that this is a very real example of something that in my lifetime, as I'm obviously British, you can tell, I've never experienced anything like this. We have a genuine crisis. Already 1 million refugees across Europe. It's going to be, they're estimating, the UN's estimating 4 million. To give you an idea, the entire population of Switzerland is 8 million. So that it's the size of whole countries in Europe on the move.
Wow.
And these are people that are just like us. They're teachers, they're people that work in the communities, they're just normal people, and they are displaced. And it's an extraordinary time that's affected us all massively. I work in the international school sector, and so in our international schools, I'm actually going to put a link into the chat. There's a school in Kiev right now. This is one of the international schools, and they've got a Google Doc, good old Google. You can fill it in and you can show support to that school. Now, obviously, if you're based in the States, you're not going to, hopefully not going to do transport. That wouldn't be necessarily great, but you can offer support and just let that school. These schools have gone into remote learning. They are still operating. Their students are displaced across Europe, and the teachers are displaced. Fortunately, the international schools have most of them have got all of their teachers out. However, like most schools, international schools you may be familiar with, they might have expatriate teachers, but of course, all of their staff that work on the ground, your caretakers, your site staff, your cooks, your cleaners, your administration staff, which from a UK perspective is the paper side, all of that, they're still there. They're still in Ukraine, and they're trying to get out, and they need support. It's a crisis that, like I said, in our from a European perspective, we've not seen anything like this since the Second World War. So it's very serious. It's affecting us all. We've all come on the back of COVID, and you were just describing the situation in your own schools and the pressure that everyone's under. And COVID has really created an instability that has really affected the mental health of many in our profession and our students as well. And we're all doing the best that we can to maintain steady, consistent education so that our young people can be successful. And we know how important it is that they're in school. We know actually, that's the point. Sometimes we don't know what happens when our children are not in school, and they need us. They need the strength of our community. They need the consistency. And then to throw in on top, we've now got a war in glorious Technicolor high definition. We can watch it on the TV, and on the TV is one thing, but you go onto YouTube and social media channels like our students are, and we're seeing horrific scenes that are real in a way that perhaps we've not seen in our generation. So this is not just about what's happening in Ukraine. It's not just about what's happening in Europe. It will affect everyone. It will affect your students, your staff. And from my side in Switzerland, we're on standby. We're literally going to the border, 12-hour drive to the border from here. We're picking people up. I've got students starting next week who are displaced from Ukraine. We've got to manage our own communities about how do we have assimilation and all those things. So it's really, really tough. It's tough for teachers. It's tough for school leaders. But this is why we need the teaching profession. We need to support all of our teachers, the teachers in Ukraine we need to support, and we need to find ways forward. Because, if you think of, education is the most powerful gift we can give our young people. That's Mandela said that.
Yeah.
And how important is that? If there's anything that we hold on to, is the fact that we can make a difference and hopefully move to a point where no child anywhere in the world should have to experience war or conflict or trauma. And it's really tough.
Well, Liz, thank you for sharing. And I definitely wish you and your family and the rest of the community over there the very best. And of course, if there's any way that we can support, please. I know you share that Google Doc, and so those of you watching, those of you participating in this conversation, feel free to join in there, or just any other way that you can contribute. As we've talked about, the world in which we live in is increasingly smaller as we are connected through technology and in other means. And so please make sure. And so if you can't pull it off of here, you can join us in our Facebook group. I know we talk about that in every single episode. We have our Facebook group, and so if you join us, you'll find the link for that Google Doc there as well, so that way you can contribute. And as we talk about global issues, I'd encourage you to check out SchoolRubric's Global Education Insights. We're going to be talking about the things that happen, in this space here, as well as the things that are happening around the world. It's really important for us to understand the impact, how we impact one another, how we can support one another. And I think that is probably one of the best things that have happened since this pandemic, that we have learned just exactly how to connect with one another, that these borders, these imaginary obstacles that were in the way are really no longer there. And so we're able to connect with one another and to support one another. I think that's the most critical thing. So we're going to get ready. We're about halfway through the show here, a little more than halfway. So we're going to get ready for question number 2. I want to say, if you are here, if you're watching, thank you so much. But please feel free to not only say good morning, let us know that you're here, or good afternoon, but please drop either questions that you may have for us or your responses. Again, we're speaking kind of from a leader perspective on how we could support teachers. But we don't want to just, as Max said earlier, ask teachers. We're asking you, teachers, if you're in this space, we want to hear from you. Please drop your responses to this as well. Welcome back, Mac.
Charles, thank you. I'm having technical difficulties today. Okay. But Darlene Petit from Aubrey, Texas, she did have a question, and maybe y'all can jump in. She says, what is your advice for aspiring leaders during this time? I'm a teacher. I want to be a leader. I don't necessarily have a leadership title. What would that advice be? My advice would be, and then I want some of you to chime in, is to remember that leadership has everything to do with influence and nothing to do with your title. That leadership is the ability to use your influence to change practice, to make people think about changing theirs. So my advice to you would be, realize that it is a challenging time, and use your influence, the things that we are saying, no, you can't clarify and you can't create, you can't give your peers the ability to say, these are the 10 things you're going to focus on most and forget about the rest. But what you can do is you can stand and use your influence. You can be an advocate. You can be that voice. You can help your teachers begin dialoguing with campus administration. And I want to just ask this panel just real quickly, what do you think an aspiring leader, someone that is in a teacher position but knows they want to be a school leader, what would you suggest they do to help with this issue that we're speaking of this morning?
I didn't want to jump in, but I'll say something real quick, only because it carries on from what you just said. And the interesting thing is, I think, I mean, for myself too, for a long time, I thought like leader, you were a leader by title, and teacher, like you didn't have the title, then, you didn't necessarily have, you shouldn't say something, or you were limited in what you could say because you weren't specifically like the tech coach or, an assistant principal or something like that. But anybody can be a leader. I mean, the students are leaders, and it comes about by what your mission is, what you believe in, what your skill set is, what your ideas are, and trying to use all of that to help others to do more is what I've come to kind of realize. Like, yeah, anybody can be a leader. And so for somebody who is considering, going into whatever leadership role, I mean, we're all leaders in some way as in our roles as educators, whatever we do, because we're in charge and involved with those that are with us. If I'm a classroom teacher, my students, and I'm leading them, but it's what are some things that you see a need for, and how do you fit into like getting those things, whatever they might be, and putting them into action, or leveraging the teacher talent is what I like to call it. The other people that are in your school that, may not, like me, like I would always say in professional development, like I'm not speaking for the table. I will put the Post-it note on the board. I'll be under the table, whatever you need, I'm not doing it. And I even would say I don't like public speaking, but then when you have those passions or those interests, or you have these ideas, like you need to share them, because you never know, even if it just impacts one person, might be that one person needs to hear it the most. And so like, you're just taking that ownership of like, okay, I have this is what I think might work, and starting the conversation involving others. I think that's the other important piece, is not just saying like, we're doing it this way and going forward with it. I think we've learned, especially in the past 2 years, that it takes all of us to be part of the conversation at the virtual table or whatever it is at this point, and just value the other perspectives and get the different ideas, because that's how we truly will see the growth. And for anybody who wants to like head down that path, you just have to start with whatever you're most passionate about, or what you believe in.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks, Rachelle. I would add the same, actually, is if you start with like Stephen Covey's work about starting with the end in mind, and really thinking about what difference can you make. And some of the most powerful people in our organizations are not the heads or the directors or the principals. You think of your office manager and that they are the person that runs the school, let's be honest. So I really think that if you are an aspiring leader, is to have an opportunity to lead a project. So what can you do in your organization? What change can you see that maybe there's a gap and you think you can add value? Choose that as a project. Go and talk to your colleagues, like Rachelle was saying, and your people around you. Get a proposal together, put it in action. And that's where you'll start to build your portfolio and your experience of leading self and others. And I just put in the link, I wrote a piece for Times Ed, which is a British education newspaper, just this week around power and influence in education. And it might be helpful for some. Give it a read if you want. Tell me what you think if it's rubbish.
Well, I don't think I have much more to share on this. I was actually going to just say that find your purpose and find opportunities to live within that purpose. I know I try to bring that out of my teachers. For example, we do these spotlights on education or on instruction. And I know that some of my teachers are phenomenal in one area and, they're not so great in others. None of us are amazing at everything. And so I try to find opportunities for them to shine within their power, right? Some people are really good at data. And so I share with the other teachers how you handle data in your classroom, right? I might have a teacher the other day, he said he was teaching a math lesson. So McCurdy, if you're here, he said, it's like chicken. And I was like, they were dividing fractions. And I was like, chicken? he's like, yeah, there's KCF. And I said, you keep, change, and flip. And I was like, okay. So he has a great way of connecting with students and putting it in ways that they understand. So everybody has their own talents. Everybody has their own ways. So we just try to give opportunities. So if you're an aspiring leader, find that thing. And if the opportunities are not being given, go and find a way to step into that, because you can't just stand back and wait for somebody to come to you. If you really want to be a leader, it's about taking initiative. So go and find an opportunity or create an opportunity so that way you can share and live within your passion. As we were talking about earlier, being fulfilled in doing this work, because that's part of trying to avoid burnout, which it is time for question number 2. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, those root causes behind the stress, behind the burnout. So let's get ready to jump into question number 2.
Inside the principal's office, discussion question 2. A lot of the symptoms and solutions appear to be short-term fixes to ensure that classes are covered and students are served. What do you believe are the real root causes behind teacher burnout and stress, and what recommendations would you give to districts, school boards, policymakers, and legislatures?
All right, another great question, Rachelle. I know that you kicked us off last time, so Liz, I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind jumping in on this one.
I find this has been the holy grail, hasn't it, for education for a long time. I've been in education, I think, 25 years, and we've been talking about this forever. One thing I find really interesting, so from a global perspective, the Council of British International Schools, COBIS, did a massive data piece on the global movement of teachers. And they looked at, from a British perspective, they looked at British domestic teachers, and then they looked at teachers that had moved into the international sector. What was really interesting is the teachers who had moved into the international sector were more likely to be in the profession and teaching in Britain 10 years later than if they'd stayed in Britain that whole time. And that started really interesting questions around, so what was it about being on the international sector that was different about the domestic sector? And it's not because the international sector is something particularly special about it. There isn't. Teaching is teaching. But that's the thing that teachers said when they were asked why. They said the biggest difference is that in the international sector, they could teach. They didn't have the compliance aspects that you get in a domestic system. So either in the States at a state level or in the UK at a national level. So the amount of paperwork in the international sector was significantly less. And teachers also had a greater degree of autonomy. They weren't being told how to teach, because in the international sector, it's the parental community that are paying the school fees. And you're accountable to them. So you're either successful in what you do or you're not. And so what the kind of conclusions from that was, if we give teachers more agency and more freedom and we trust them to do what they do, then they will stay longer. If they don't feel valued, if they don't feel that the people around them are supporting them, if they're being forced to teach in ways that they don't fundamentally or ethically believe are right, then we start to see a gap between what we started with at the beginning of this conversation, which is your why and why you're teaching in the first place. And so I think we've got a lot to learn there, all around the world, around how do we enable teachers to be their very best selves? And again, remove the barriers. So that's what I think, is let teachers teach.
Liz, it's interesting that you say that. And I don't know if I've said it in this space, but I say it a lot. Years ago when I was an assistant principal, I had the opportunity to travel to China. And we were trying to set up like sister schools. And I was amazed the fact that some of these teachers were in their schools, not like just in education, they were in their schools 20, 30 years. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, we're surprised if you're there 5, which I think is a very low bar, but it's the reality. And I said, well, why are you here? And so as we toured the school, one, we saw the facilities, like there was, teachers could live on campus if they chose to. The teachers' lounges, had everything, that they needed. And then, they talked about how they taught for 3 or 4 hours a day. And I said, well, what do you do for the rest of your day? It's a full-time job. And they said, well, we plan and we review and we do feedback. And they were like, when do your teachers do that? And I was like, at home, right? And so it just comes back to what you're saying is giving them that time and that space to do their jobs. I think, yeah, compliance is a big thing. Even as leaders, I think we're focused on compliance. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to jump in because that's one of those things I talk about a lot. And so I'm glad you echoed that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Rachelle. Yeah, no, you're back.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It was frozen, and I saw the spinning beach ball. I'm like, yep, that's going to take a minute. Yeah, everything that Liz said, and I had reached out on, posted on social media last night, just because I've seen a lot of educators asking questions recently. Just put like a daily question about a lot of the different topics, some of which we're talking about here this morning, and I was like, I'm going to do this too. And I said, just looking for some ideas about, what recommendations do you have for administrators for schools to help with teacher burnout? And Vernon Wright, who many people know Vernon, had some great advice. And I just wanted to share his. And he said, acknowledge it, listen, especially to those directly involved in day-to-day instruction. Always remember, and I love this one, to keep the main thing as the main thing. Remember the real purpose of education and take action. And so I always enjoy learning from Vernon. And then a good friend of mine, Mandy Freilich, writes a lot about teacher disengagement and burnout and mental health and wellness, and has great tips that she shares. And I've seen in my own school and some other schools, just making some time for teachers to really, like Liz was saying too, like let them just like teach. And some of the other things that get added on that cause the extra stress that may not necessarily need to happen. Like we've seen the messages go around about like, did it really need to be a meeting? Could it have been an email? And could it have been a meeting that was not like a meeting for work? It was just something relaxing. I've heard of schools bringing in, like yoga instructors and just dropping off treats or coffee or just something like that, or like, hey, go outside and take a walk. I mean, just random things. There are a lot of ways to go about doing some different things to help teachers. But I think the biggest thing has been, there has been a lot of stress because we've had so many different concerns over the past 2 years. And for some teachers, that's not, I've been in education a long time. That's not something we've ever experienced and knew exactly how to go about doing it. So we ended up taking on a lot more and then trying to figure out how to balance all of that. And it's not easy to do. And so I think for schools, the best advice, not that I have like all of the best advice, is just trying to build in time, even though time is kind of hard to find during the school day. But even small amounts of time, like a 5 minute, a 10 minute, checking in on the teachers or having some system in place where it's something fun, it's something ridiculous. It just takes the break. And it might just be a 5 minute, but also, there's never a shortage of surveys that go around in schools, but surveys can be quick, as long as they're not super lengthy, and find out, what is something that you need and what is something that we could help you with, and having some ideas and just valuing what teachers have to say. Because often you don't have that opportunity to have those conversations in person, or maybe, there's that fear of speaking out like, oh, this is so much work, I don't want to do this. But that anonymity that can come with some of those surveys too can help. And just making sure to just listen in. Like my phrasing has become lean in and listen more is what I've said, because often, you have somebody come to you for advice, and our natural inclination, I think, is like we want to start to offer advice, but sometimes they just need a sounding board. They just want you to stand there and like not say anything, just absorb, and then go from that point on. And so I think just providing a variety of different types of spaces and resources, if teachers want to go out and find some self-care options, like that it's there, but it's not that it's like a forced mandated type of a thing either, because that's not a good way to go as well.
Yeah, y'all have said so many great things. I still just say that in education, we have to just look at our culture. And our culture needs an overhaul. I think teachers are overwhelmed because of the many things we add things on, and we're great at creating the start doing list, but we don't make the stop doing list. And for everything you add, what are you going to take away? Or let's create a structure and a system of how you can get this done and how you can get this done in your contract day. because that's the thing. Like Charles was saying, our teachers, they do so many things by coming early and staying late. But if let's identify what is really, really essential and what has to be done, and let's create a master schedule where those things can be done within their contract day. We talk about balance and self-care, but if you never have time to do it, you know what I'm saying? And like she said, sometimes even self-care and the way we talk about self-care becomes a point of anxiety because now you're telling me I need to go do another thing when they don't, now I have to figure out how to get that thing in. So let's create master schedules and let's create systems where these things can be done and they can be done within the contract day. Give teachers time to collaborate within their contract day. Let's give teachers to do all of these things that we say are essential and critical to perform their job and perform their job well. Let's engineer time and spaces for them to do that. We are.
Hey, Mac, before we jump in, can I say one more thing? So
Yes,
I know we're going to go over the ideas that stick. But
Charles in charge. Yes.
I never get that. No. So I want to connect with something that John mentioned in his comments, John Hurrick. So thank you for being here, John. And also that Rachelle said that Vernon had mentioned. I think one of the things that we also have to do is we have to acknowledge the realities of the situations that we're working in. And I know I mentioned this earlier and I said I was going to talk about it here. Just the other day, I was talking to my building engineer because he was talking about how tired he was, how just his family was, they were like, not feeling well and things like that. And I said, I think a lot of times what happens is that there's so much happening, right? I mean, we have a pandemic, we have, we're on the brink of a global war. We have, this shifting between teaching styles, all of these different things that are happening. And it just kind of sits there, right? And if we don't acknowledge it, if we just suppress it, it doesn't mean that it goes away, right? It impacts our bodies, it impacts our minds, regardless of if we're realizing it or not. And so I think that's one of the other things that we have to do is we have to be cognizant of the world in which we're operating, because it's just, for me anyway, I think that's causing a lot of this stress. It's not always just the teaching profession. It is, but when I'm stressed about what's going to happen to the gas prices, what's going to happen to, is my family, do I got to get another vaccine or a booster or whatever it may be, and all of those things I'm worried about. And then something happens at school. And I just said this to my secretary the other day. I'm trying to be as transparent as I can. I told her, I said, I'm irritable right now. I said, so I'm sorry. Like if I say the wrong, I'm sorry. I'm going to pop into my office and try to recollect myself and acknowledge those things. So that way that frustration, that stress, that annoyance about all of those other things isn't directed in the wrong space. So I think that's one of the things that we as leaders have to do, is to give our teachers that space to process. I know we try to do courageous conversations. We hold circles and we're just open and honest with one another. It gives space to have that transparent conversation, but we need to, because if we're carrying around this luggage, we can't pretend like it's not impacting us and who we are, and then those interactions that we have with others. And so it was just like an aha moment when I was talking to my building engineer. I was like, maybe this is one of those reasons why we're all just like, I don't want to do this. It's not the work. We've been doing this work forever, but it's all of those other things that are influencing how we're perceiving the work.
And Charles, isn't that affecting leaders as well? How we model this at this time, and how do we, the things that we're trying to do for our staff, we've got to make sure that we do that visibly ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that can be really hard, can't it? It's the weekend working. I know it's Saturday. We've got the emails. What time are they going? What models and expectations are we setting around a profession and this service that we give to our communities? But in order to serve others, we have to serve ourselves first. And I think that's, as leaders, we need to be more transparent in doing that. I don't think it's necessarily something as principals and directors we're particularly good at. And we also want to encourage people into leadership. And if they think that this is going to take all of who you are, we're going to lose a whole load of people who could be great school leaders. So I'm trying really hard to model it myself as well. I'm really clear when I'm working, when I'm not working. I don't email on the weekends. And so I'm trying to do these little things, the little things that make a difference. And it's not the number of hours that make you the most effective teacher. And it's not the number of hours that makes you the most effective leader.
That should be one of those taglines, Wallace.
It should, most definitely. Hey, we're going to move on to our favorite part, my favorite part at least, of our show. And that's when we start taking this dialogue and we start putting it into actions. And so we're going to move into ideas that stick. And our question for ideas that stick this week is, what is one action or gesture you can make to teachers to let them know that they are appreciated and that they are heard? I will go first, and I believe my idea that stick is ask teachers what they need. It goes back to that simple: do you know what is expected, and do you have what you need to make that happen? It's this ideal of reciprocal accountability. That there are so many things that we are holding you accountable for, but let teachers know that you have the right to hold me accountable and the system accountable to give you those things that you need to do this work. Liz, Liz, what's your idea that stick, and then we'll
Well,
hear from Rachelle.
mine was kind of the same as yours. Is the biggest thing is to empower the profession and the people who are doing the job. So
Yes.
asking them, I think I wrote pretty much the same thing. Is asking, yeah, find out what teachers actually need, and our role is to try and increase the agency of teachers. But I would also throw in there, it's two. I'm going to cheat. It's two.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Is as teachers, if you're a teacher, is to also manage up and be really clear in a proactive way, and also develop your professional networks. So make connections with other schools, with other teachers, find out what works elsewhere. And as a school leader, when a teacher comes to me and says, Liz, I've really been thinking about this and I'm struggling with it, I found out that these people do it like this and I've seen this elsewhere, what do you think? It's now giving the answer as well as the problem or possible answers. So I think be proactive as well.
That's great. And I was going to say that to Darlene Petit as well a little earlier. Be the solution to a problem on your campus. Excellent. Rachelle, what's your idea that sticks?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give you three. No, I'm kidding. But I will say first, I mean, just making that time to listen to what the needs are of the teachers, and of course that you have to have the conversations, and then showing teachers that they're valued. But just to take part of what Liz said, and I do believe in that. Like truly the power of like being connected, having a PLN. And again, it's something else that I didn't know years ago. And I wish I did because of a difference, not that it just makes for us individually as educators, but the impact that it has on our students too, because the idea is if we are struggling, what we can bring back into them. But especially now, as we've been going through the past 2 years and who knows, as we move forward, having that network where you can just rely and reach out to somebody using any space, because we have so many choices. Even if you can't see the person that teaches next door to you, like often happens to me, I can get on Voxer or one of the other spaces and send a message and have a response that I need, really quickly. So I'm taking part of Liz's and just attaching it to my own. So thank you.
Oh, so, one of the things I had mentioned is this idea you can't be everything to everyone. And I appreciate, Rachelle's dropping a quote for me. I'm a big fan of quotes. I loved it. Don't set yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. So we got to be intentional about what we're doing to make sure that others are taken care of. And so one of the things I've been trying to do is to learn the languages of appreciation. It's very easy to run around and do everything for everyone, or try to, but you also have to think, like, is that what they need? Right? Some people don't need gifts, right? They just want a word of affirmation. Some people don't even need gifts or words of affirmation. They just want to be present, right? So they just need, as we mentioned earlier, they just need an ear to listen to them. And so while you may be running around doing all of these things for everyone, let's try to be intentional about that. And so learn their language of appreciation so that way you can give them what they need. Because I think as leaders, there's probably nothing more frustrating than for the teacher to say, I don't feel supported. And you're like, what are you talking about? I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And it's like, that's not what I need, right? So instead of doing for your staff what you think they need, right, listen to them, as we've said in here, give them that space, but try to find out what is it that they need and to do those things. And so I'm working on that. So that's my wife's probably watching this. I'm like, well, you didn't read the love language book. Sorry. being transparent. No. All right. So we're going to summarize this. It has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being in this space. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Rachelle, for just being in here and giving us all of this information. I think that, we are continuously learning and growing from one another, which is why we do this. And so thank you for being in this space. We're trying to connect ideas here. We have talked about, focusing on what teachers need. We talked about burnout, and a lot of what we're talking about is giving them the time and the space and focusing on the things they need. So next, our next episode on the 19th, we're actually going to talk a little bit about that. Like, how do we say we need to develop, we need to move forward, we need to do this training, but it doesn't make sense to have everyone do everything. So how do we personalize PD opportunities for teachers, right? We still need to grow and learn as an educator, but how do I do the things that I need and not waste my time sitting in a workshop or a conference or whatever it may be for something that doesn't pertain to me, which is something I know that I've been trying really hard with my own staff. So that is going to be on the 19th. So we hope that you come back and join us for that episode. And with that being said, something that we often do is we ask our current guests for a question around that topic that we could potentially discuss in the next episode. So I'm going to ask Liz, Rachelle, if both of you wouldn't mind, if you were to talk about PD, personalized PD, what is one question that you would have that you would love to learn a little more about? So Rachelle, I'm going to kick things off to you first.
Oh no, I was hoping it was Liz first on that one, because then I was just going to be like, oh, well, Liz took mine. Yeah. The one thing that comes to mind is, well, personalized PD in certain schools, there are mandates and things you have to have this training. And so you can't get around that. But I'm curious about how many schools are out there that are actually, and I mentioned the words teacher talent before, that are having teachers come in and share what they're doing in their classrooms. And so a question would be, how are you leveraging your teacher talent in your school? Or what are some ways that teachers can share and be more involved in the design? Because my school, we have a PD committee, and sometimes we will have sessions led by teachers, when it can fit, whenever we don't have those other initiatives that we have going on. But just, what are you doing to amplify the voice, or what the activities are that your teachers or teacher talent in your school that they can share and build that capacity?
Nice. I like that, teacher talent. All right, Liz, what about you?
So I am going to make a bit of an appeal, actually, to throw out performance management. Complete waste of time. Don't bother doing it. And we think about what teachers really care about, and the things that drive them crazy is these kind of things when they're forced to jump through hoops that don't pertain to what they do. So don't do it if it doesn't make a difference to you. And I can say that in a school where I've got complete autonomy. Welcome to the international sector. So what we do not do performance management at all. In fact, I've thrown the whole thing out. So we don't do teacher evaluation. We don't need to. What we ask our teachers to do is to come from a culture of self-improvement, because we know that if everyone just improves their practice, just 0.1%, the cumulative effect will be taking our schools from good to great. And that's what we want, is we want great environments for our students. So when you're talking about PD next week, I'd want to explore more is how can staffs, what difference can they make in their communities? If they were really successful in changing something in their practice, what would it be? What would it look like? Can they picture that in a classroom or a learning environment? How would it feel? What would the students be doing? And then I would then track it back. So what do you need to change in your practice? What do you need to get there? What do you need from resource? Is it collaboration? Is it time? Is it training? Whatever it is. And then come up with a 12 to 18 month plan so that it's a long-term sustained improvement that will make a difference. And if you can't do it in your domestic setting, you can come and join us in the international sector. We'll steal all your local teachers, and then we'll have a whole session about attrition in the profession, because you're all in the international sector. That's where you are. We've already got over 500,000 of you. So come and work for us.
That is great. I know Wallace and I have had that conversation. He keeps telling me, go. My wife is like, you're not ready to go into this. Yeah. But, Liz, you're making it sound very appealing. So thank you for those great questions. We appreciate it. And so again, we hope that you join us next Saturday, not next Saturday, the Saturday afterwards, the 19th. So thank you again, Liz, Rachelle, for being in this place. Mac, thank you for being phenomenal as always, sir. Thank you, sir. I'll let you close out before we say goodbye.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to encourage everyone to go to Facebook and join our Facebook group. We want you to share If this has helped you, if it is, made you think about things a different way, we want you to share this on social media. We want to expand our reach. We want more people to learn about inside the principal's office. Thank all of you who are online now who stepped inside the principal's office, and those of you who will watch the rebroadcast. When you come in contact with it, share it with another leader, share it with another aspiring leader, with another educator. I believe that this is a platform that can truly make a difference in the lives of students, because everything's connected to helping all kids learn at high levels.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again. We will see you on the 19th. I'll actually be at the ASCD conference then. Basil, you are presenting and you're my very first session, so I'm looking forward to meeting you there. But thank you all. We cannot wait to see you. Until next time, take care.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching School Rubric on YouTube. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe in order to stay looped in on all of our diverse collection of shows, interviews, panels, tutorials, and more from educators around the globe. And visit us at SchoolRubric.com for even more great content, such as our online articles, Interact magazine, featured podcasts, and more. Thank you.